Welcome to the 2 month review. Actually, welcome to an old episode of the 2 month review. So, as you may know, if you follow the 3% blog or the 2 month review Twitter or Chad post myself, my Twitter, we are going to be launching the next season of the 2 month review in May. And it will focus on the third volume of Rodrigo Fresán's amazing trilogy that consists of the invented part, the dream part, and now the remembered part. The Remembered Part is a giant and incredible book, very rich, very fulfilling in terms of summing up and completing the trilogy. But before we dive into it, it felt like a good idea to try and remind everyone what happened in the first two volumes. The very first volume, The Invented Part, was the very first season of the 2 month review. So to celebrate Rodrigo, to emphasize his importance to both Open Letter and this podcast and everything else, I thought we would rerun all of the episodes from the Invented Part season and the Dream Part season, giving anyone who hasn't heard them before a chance to listen to them, but also anyone who's interested in joining up in this next season, focusing on the third volume of the trilogy. This could be a good refresher. I personally think I need it. My brain is just mush these days. So enjoy your re-listen or first listen to all of these forthcoming 2 month review podcasts. Subscribe to us, like us on YouTube, like us on Apple or whatever you do there. You rate things, like us, follow us on Twitter. We're at 2 month review, and have fun. Rodrigo is a blast. His books are wild, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy all of this.
Big sky look down on all the people looking up at the big sky. Everybody's pushing one another around.
Welcome to 2 month review. This is Chad Post. I'm here as always with Brian Wood, who never replies when I cue him. And this is our weekly podcast in which we're reading a single book, in this case, The Invented Part by Rodrigo Fresán, over a 2 month period, talking about it, going through it bit by bit, enjoying it, finding new and interesting connections, and talking with special guests. Our special guest today is Rachel Cordasco. How do you mispronounce your last name? Cordasco.
Yeah, Cordasco.
Cordasco. I always want to say Cardoso, which is why even when I was emailing you, I got your email confused with his, because Rafael Cardoso is the state for one of our authors, and I keep screwing up both of your names. Anyways, Rachel is here joining us. We're going to be talking about the third part of the second section of the Invented Part, so pages 208 through 229. It's a pretty short section compared to last week's one, but also packed full of little clues and hints and whatnot. So first off, welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I want to before I ask you any questions, I want to read your bio from a few years ago because I think this is wonderful. This is a bio online. Rachel Cordasco is a literary studies PhD, which means she's read a freaking ton of books over the years and has taught American literature and composition. She's also worked as an editorial assistant at the Wisconsin Historical Society Press. For most of her reading life, Rachel has shunned anything written after 1920. But she's finally emerged from her dusty little attic corner and is determined to read at least one new book every other month.
That was a few years ago.
Yes. So I think the first time that I started talking to you and saw things that you're working on is through the Speculative Fiction and Translation. Actually, I knew you before then, but you have a new website called Speculative Fiction and Translation, which covers a lot of like sci-fi speculative literature from all over the world, all of which is written way after 1920. So,
oh yeah, everything I read now has like been written within the past 3 years. So, my background was on like American naturalism at the turn of the 20th century. So, I was like a classics kind of girl. But I discovered this whole other area of life, and it makes my brain explode in a good way. So I'm glad that I opened my mind to contemporary fiction.
Do you want to explain for a second why you use the term speculative fiction instead of like science fiction or the other choices?
Yeah. Well, I've always loved science fiction, and when I started writing reviews for a site called SF Signal, people were I noticed people were using speculative to kind of encompass fantasy, science fiction, magical realism, horror, the weird, and all the surreal and all that stuff. And I realized when I started becoming interested in science fiction in translation, I realized that I was going to kind of cut myself off from a large number of novels and stories if I just did sci-fi in translation. So I use speculative to kind of encompass that whole realm of not quite reality.
Right.
And so that seems to kind of open it up to more things that are not easily kind of put into a specific genre. It makes it more interesting.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And do you see this book as falling into the speculative fiction category?
Yeah, I mean, most obviously in terms of merging with the God particle, like that, that kind of thing. But this is kind of one of those books that's like a few others I've recently read that kind of hover on the margins of it, that are more interested in talking about the fabric of reality itself instead of spaceships, and aliens.
Right.
So it's that's why it's such a broad area. That's what people are like, oh, speculative fiction. It's like, no, you don't understand. A lot of what you read is actually speculative fiction. And Fresán is so great about saying what does he call it? Logical irreality or something.
Yeah.
He's like, it's like, what are you talking about? There is no realism. Realism is ridiculous. That's, everything is invented, or only the invented parts are the most interesting. And so realist fiction is just, some other term that doesn't really mean what it's supposed to mean. So yeah, this kind of does, just in a very different way. This isn't like space opera from Japan. So
right. Absolutely not. I have one question for you too. I saw that you had mentioned this on Twitter, that you were talking about how there's two versions of Sister Carrie, the Theodore Dreiser book.
Yes.
That sort of tied into our discussion about a couple weeks ago about Tender is the Night and the two versions of that, which comes up at the very beginning of the invented part. But I guess I didn't know about the two versions of Sister Carrie at all.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. You can find out about it online. There's some pretty good websites, but it's called the Pennsylvania version or the Pennsylvania edition, which is supposed to be like the official edition. And then there's another one, and the reason why it's all screwed up is because when Sister Carrie was published, they're all excited to publish it, and then the wife of the publisher read it and said, "This is indecent." This was 1900. She's like, "This is indecent. This is ridiculous. You cannot, publish it." And they're like, "Too late." So they just kind of quashed it and just didn't promote the book. And so over the years, it's kind of been it was reworked and picked up by various publishers. And basically now there are two versions that exist. And the only way I knew that they both existed at the same time was that I told my mom to read Sister Carrie, and we were discussing it. And she said, "Yeah, that ending was crazy." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And we realized she had I don't know, I had the Penguin edition and she had the Bantam edition. I don't know. And I looked at the two versions, and the endings are totally the ending of one is actually the middle of the other.
Oh, okay, and so it's resequenced.
Yeah, but there's nothing that says hey, this is one version and there's another version. You have no idea, and they're existing at the same time now. So I don't know what, but the Pennsylvania version is for some reason called the official one. I don't know why, if that's the one that's less edited, because he did a lot of heavy editing and trying to make it less scandalous or whatever, which is, it's fascinating because her experience and my experience reading the same book, were just vastly different, because one ends with a suicide and the other one doesn't. So spoiler.
I think that's a very, very bad sign for a book, because like whenever you're at Walmart and there's a DVD that says alternate ending included, it's usually a bad movie. If you can't figure out what ending you want, you screwed up somewhere. I'm sorry. I don't want alternate endings. I'll do unrated, because you might get a little more interesting stuff in an unrated version.
Yeah.
But alternate ending's never a good sign.
Alternate ending sounds like something for like Batman v Superman : The Rise of Justice or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Oh man. So, but that does that whole kind of idea of there being different orders or whatever does play into this a little bit, where not only do we have like the writer rewriting things in the last section, the Penelope story section, and sort of adding to and revising and whatever else, but you could actually I still think, going back through this the second time, you could read these parts in any order.
Yeah.
Possibly.
I was thinking about that and how the first part, like I think the first part with the boy at the ocean, like I think that's that kind of stays in the front, but like the ending, because I'm 50 pages from the end, and I could see how fascinating it would be to move like the whole thing with the writer on the airplane, like actually on the airplane, versus the young man thinking about meeting the writer on an airplane. Like if they were switched, how interesting that would be.
So no spoilers for that part.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay.
But to sort of temper that, maybe I usually try and describe like the section at this beginning part, and this one is in terms of plot, there's just a few main points which are pretty noteworthy. So there's the young man and the young woman. We're back out of Penelope's like crazy story. She ends up with the giant green cow, drinking the giant green cow giant green cow's milk, and finding all the diamonds. We're out of that. We're back to the present time, where the young man and the young woman are making the movie about the writer, and they're staying outside of the house that she built with all those diamonds. And the young man can't sleep. There's a little interplay between him and the young woman, who's not necessarily sleeping, but neither of them are acting on anything. And then he decides that what he needs to do to become a writer, because that's really his big dream in life, is that he wants to be a writer. He wants to see his books in print. He wants to see them in a bookstore. That's his thing. And the way that he's going to get there is by going into the writer's house and stealing the little mechanical dude that walks backwards carrying the briefcase. And then by getting that like talisman, he'll be able to that will be the source of all these ideas. And he goes in, he sees a camera, and thinks about like the idea of taking a picture of himself videotaping him taking this little mechanical man. And on the camera finds a video in which a young boy, is recording the writer and asking him questions, and asks him who his favorite authors are. And he ends up naming the young man as one of them. And then we get a few little bits about the young man having one interaction with the writer, the one time that they met on an airplane, which had been alluded to, I think, in the first part of this as well, but it's definitely comes up a number of times here. And there's like a sort of secret that's hinted at. And then Penelope sees him in there. She decides, screw it. She sets her whole house on fire, and she runs away. The end.
Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah.
So what's your take? What's your impressions of this part?
Me, Brian.
Either of you.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Oh, me. Okay.
Yeah, you can go first.
I thought this was a very elegant 20 pages, because it starts off with in a real dark night of the soul. It's always 3:00 in the morning, and it comes out that it comes out that this was Fitzgerald, right?
Yeah, that is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, and of course this whole thing is about time. Like this whole, the 20 pages, he keeps kind of looking at the time and thinking back to,
Sorry, I'm throwing things at my cat.
I know, it's okay. Thinking back to like what he wants to be, and what's become of time that's slipping away while he's just kind of making this documentary that's not getting him anywhere. So he feels like time is really kind of stopped. And then that video, I mean, is that the future? Is that the past? Who is this boy? This whole um, thing about clocks and time, it's kind of like disorienting. But then I was thinking again about that first line and thinking, well, so then if it is 3 a.m. in this section, does that mean that this is the dark night of the young man's soul? And I guess that's what Fresán is kind of asking us to think about. And why then would the mechanical man like do anything to help him? It seems like the young man is really trying to kind of latch on like on the surface to things, following the writer, trying to get his talisman, sleeping outside of the writer's sister's house. He's always on the margins of things, and he can't step, I don't know, into real time where life is happening. I don't know. It's like he's almost caught in some sort of like temporal whatever. But I thought it was just a really nice section, and like you said, packed with just so much. Talk about it forever.
Hey, Brian, what'd you think?
I thought it was a really interesting contrast from how crazy the one that huge section before was, where with the American typewriter and the like going back and forth from Penelope and then kind of the chorus aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's kind of, I think what you were saying when you wrote it, how he had open like 7 different files and he would pick a certain one and write that day.
Yeah.
And this definitely feels like I could feel that in this section. It just, the voice felt so much different. The pacing was so much different. This seemed more plot oriented, whereas before it's way, way, way more tangential. And it was just kind of a nice little like breath in what was before it. It was kind of perfectly placed, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's something interesting too with there's 2 things that come to mind. When you say that he's in this like 3 a.m. dark moment of his soul, there's the illusion where he talks about like people who sell their souls to the devil for like success or for whatever reason. And that's a great little part because it really does hint at that the young man has done something devious and is sort of going to that because of his deviousness he's being rewarded for it, but he's sort of sold his soul for that. But also when you say like the stuff about being the writer and on the margins, there's a lot of that in here. So like the part where Penelope even says, where is it here? Oh yeah, it's on like 225, where she thinks anything so long as the small storyline of her life diverges from the atomic and particular saga of her brother, who absorbs everything and rewrites it. And there's kind of this like her idea of like being outside of the pre-written books, the things that her brother can do now, or like can rewrite or take over her sort of story, or that even the illusions that she's had, that where she had her story with the karmas, that he used that for material for his book, and that everything's being sort of subsumed into him, and she wants to be outside of that. And at the same time, there's almost a parallel opposite, that the young man wants to like become the writer and become like the writer and be part of that inner circle where your books are on bookshelves and you can go ask the bookseller what they thought of them in disguise.
Well, I think Penelope, she doesn't want to be part of her brother's.
Right, she was outside of it.
Right, but then it says like on 224, she says, it's been years since she accepted the fact that she'd never be a combative Kathy Earnshaw, not even a Jane Eyre. And she mentions that before in the karma section, which I think is just, I just love that section so much. I just want to rip it out and hug it. But I love it. I mean, I was in the middle of it. My mother-in-law asked me what I was reading. I said, I can't even explain. But anyway.
The exact same thing happened to me. They're like, so what are you reading? Tell me about it.
You don't even want me to try.
Don't even worry.
But
it makes fun of Jesus. You won't like it.
Totally. But I mean, Penelope, I mean, her name itself is already like, okay, you're already part of, the Western, tradition, but, she wants to be, Kathy or Jane, and she's already kind of thinking in that way where she wants to be a certain character. She doesn't want to be somebody else's character that has chosen who she is. Like, she wants to use the template of literature to figure out who she is. But that's an empty kind of pursuit anyway, because these are characters, these are not real people. And does she not see herself as a real person? And is that why she was kind of sucked up into that karma family so easily, because she doesn't really know what I don't even know, like, I don't remember, does she even do anything in particular, or is she just like she just I don't know, she's
It's true, I think she just is, actually. Which is curious. Yeah, it's like she is kind of they're going in kind of opposite directions, and her big action is burning down the house, whereas his big action is like trying to steal the little talisman.
Yeah. But she's like, she decides to, she makes a choice by, sparing the young man's life. Again, it's like a passive kind of action. She could, I don't know what she could do, but she could do something, but then she just kind of, and when she burns the house down, like, she knows that he's leaving, right? Like, she doesn't expect to kill him.
Yeah.
While he's in the house. So I don't know. It seems like very kind of like a fruitless, fruitless thing, but the fire cleansing, trying to start anew, destroying, what's she going to create after that? But yeah, I love how, like, you think that that in this whole kind of moment they're interacting, but then you find out that he didn't even turn around.
Right.
So he's not really sure she was even there, and then it's like, well, what just happened then? Did nothing happen?
Yeah.
5 pages, and then it's like, well, no, nothing actually happened. So yeah.
I was really hoping, because of the green milk poisoning, she was going to decapitate him and then rape him in that order. But that's probably a different book.
Or a different section. Never know.
Yeah, or a different section. I don't know what the green milk makes you do, but I was really hoping the crazy would come out.
We do get more hints here of the he who cannot be named or whatever is essentially like her son. But there's the rest of his story isn't really explained here. Like, I guess that's the way at this moment in time, as far as you're in the book, you can sort of interpret it that's what she's putting out of her mind, and that's what she's not able to think about, and she wants to erase it to the point where you cannot even remember that something's been erased, which is really sad and kind of moving sentiment. And then like that would be the boy who's recording the writer on the video, talking about his favorite authors and they're running on the beach and all that, kind of harkens back to that first chapter too, of a boy playing on the beach. And that sort of there's still more to that story that hasn't been quite come out yet.
Yeah, and another sprinkling of Ishmael again, so we don't forget him apparently.
Nope. Those are the parts that is sort of hard to not talk about or to like not spoil in some way. Like, but
like I'm sure he's nothing. He just keeps sprinkling them in every now and then. These probably amounts to nothing. I don't trust him. So.
It's just like in Twin Peaks, where it leads you one direction and it's just a decoy. This is my weekly Twin Peaks reference. I can get in there every time.
I've never seen it, but I'm going to start. I'm going to start from the beginning.
Oh yeah, well.
Yeah. Somehow I never watched it, but I'm intrigued. I really am.
It's pretty fantastic. But yeah, that's neither here nor there for the invented part, I guess. Except that there is a scene in the new Twin Peaks that's in Buenos Aires that ties in, kind of. But anyways, yeah, the other part of this particular section that I really like were all the bits about him, like his writingly desires. Like, they seem like they probably hit a little close to home at times for like reading it and being like, man, yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? It would be fun to like be a writer, a respected writer in that sense. But I love that kind of, like, they really he really gets at that sort of belief and that sort of want among a certain type of person, that literature means that much and that literature is the one thing that you want to do, and contrasting that with like everyone else around him.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the part ways back where he was talking about the 5 different writers groups that he was in and the experiences that he had in writers groups. This one, he like kind of pulls back the veil and nails like the angst you have as a writer or a writer. So yeah, it cuts a little close to home, but it's nice that, other people are embarrassed just like you are, I guess. So it's wonderful. Yeah.
I like that. I like
Misery Loves Company.
Yeah.
He talks about how writing is not like a job where you can, you're a dentist and you go and you work on people's teeth and then you go home. Writing is something that's
and
with you.
Contemplate killing yourself, apparently, with dentistry, but yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. But this whole thing where it's like you can't, and then this, man, this sucks. I really want to talk about got a part in the further on, but anyway, it's this whole thing of it reminds me of I saw David Sedaris years and years ago, and he was talking about what it's like to use bits from your life in what you write, and knowing that people know that you're using them, and it literally changes how they act. They start realizing that if you're in the room, whatever they're doing is going to be, and they know that you're going to make fun of them because you're, you write, humorous stories. And so you start to kind of rethink, because people say, oh, you got to put that in there. You got to make me a character, and it changes the whole dynamic of a room. And I think that's kind of what the writer and the young man are both aware of, where, nothing can ever not be part of what you write. I mean, you don't,
Right.
I mean, of course what you write is autobiographical in some way. I mean, you don't start from nothing, just pull stuff out of thin air. It comes from some experience.
Yeah. I really like that part that you're sort of alluding to too, is on 212, where there's a long paragraph or a long bit that begins with like, the young man thinks too much, the young man wishes he could think less, and then goes on about he'd wake up one day and realize he was doing these other jobs, and then towards the bottom it's like, much safer and more relaxing professions that when people ask what you do, don't generate other questions, uncomfortable ones like,
Right.
What are your books about? Or what's your name? Or are you well known? Or were any of your books made into a movie? Or Ultimate Classics was the complicit wink, like, I've got a great story. Want me to tell it to you so you can use it? And being a writer, you must meet a lot of interesting women, huh? It's all very spot on.
Well, I love how then on 213, the narrative that's in the young man's mind, I don't know, to me it started screaming the Great Gatsby when it says, now what the young man looks out at the horizon, blah, blah, and latches onto the solitary and never last point of a light twinkling in the darkness, suffering coming to his rescue. And I was like, the green light, that Jay Gatsby's always looking at. And that seemed kind of surreal, because you thought you were in, this is what Fresán does so brilliantly, like you thought you were in the young man's brain, and then suddenly you're like pretty sure you're suddenly in the Great Gatsby, and then you're back in the young man's brain, and then seamlessly you move into the young woman's brain, and then Penelope, and I don't know. I love the young woman in this section. She's so funny. She's like evil but funny at the same time.
That's a good way
Like,
to put
oh,
it.
I'm sleeping and I'm just so tired,
Right.
making all this noise, and he's like dying and not realizing that she's awake and realizing that he's not it's just Hall of Mirrors, like the whole book. But
She's got that
She was pretty great.
She's got that great line too. And the young woman asks herself something in the low yet deafening voice of thought that she doesn't dare answer. Isn't it about time to think about things that are not literature? Isn't it time to stop thinking about literature as if it were some kind of demanding religion that leaves no room for anything or anyone else? What time could it be? What time is it? Right? Time does come up here a lot, like endlessly. I don't think I'd pay
This
as
just
much
alludes
attention to
to
that.
something from the future of the book. Oh God, this is hard.
Yep. Yeah. That's why I only read to the sections we're supposed to. I read this a year ago. My memory's a little vaguer. There was two, like, in our never-ending list of like the different references that are within here. The one in 217 was one that like slid right by me. And this is probably a blank spot in my life, but where he's talking about singing the song, and it says, young man sings, you say you're so happy now you can hardly stand, lean over on the bookcase if you really want to get straight. And he can't remember who sings it or what line comes next, but he does remember it's an old song, something from the mid 80s from another planet, because it's a song they'd been before he'd been born. Did you guys know that one?
No.
I did not.
The Commotions, Are You Ready to Be Heartbroken?
Still don't know it.
That's okay. So that's the same for me. Like, it's a great title for this section. Are you ready to be heartbroken? And makes sense there. Yeah. But it was one that I just don't. I'm not familiar with that song. So and that one slid by for me. But this isn't a direct allusion. But the one other thing that I marked down here as a fun allusion is oh shoot, what is the name of that movie? Have you guys ever seen any movies by Hal Hartley?
I don't think so.
He has a bunch of interesting movies from like the mid 90s. They were all kind of like in a similar sort of vein, like The Unbelievable Truth and Trust and Simple Man and Amateur Flirt. They're all from like the early 90s. And there's one in 97 called Henry Fool that is about a writer who's constantly talking about how he's going to write a book that's going to blow a hole through all of reality. And that's like right there on page 214 where he's like, and all he'll have left is the definitive charm of not being able to be a writer, moving through meetings and workshops and book presentations, drinking too much and trying to convince some dupe, or better, some young girl more innocent than interesting, that he spent years working on something that's already reached 2,000 pages, something destined to change everything, but the world, not him, isn't ready for that kind of impact.
But it's that whole, like, you don't know what it is, so it's got, you don't know, you don't show, like, the scariest thing is something that's not shown. You don't want to, like, show the monster, you just want to kind of, like, hint at it, because that's much more scary. So when you say, I've got something, it is going to rock this planet, but nobody is ready for it. Everybody's like, what? We really want it. But you can't deliver that. You can never deliver on that, because then you deliver on it and it's like, oh, that sucked. That was nothing.
That did not terrible.
That's why endings are horrible. That's why, like, I read books, and if the ending actually is like not horrible, or not like a letdown, I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. It's just because it's hard. It's hard to end. It's hard to, like, make an ending kind of, the culmination of everything and say, see, this was worth it. It's just one of the hardest things. But to kind of promise, when you promise something that really gets people interested, but again, delivering on it, he knows that's impossible.
Yeah. And it is always, but I love that sort of like, yeah, whatever I write, it's going to just change the world. It's not just, you're never just writing a book. You're writing the book. The ultimate book. So
Great American Novel.
The Great American Novel.
Which Philip Roth wrote, so.
Filled in.
Yeah. Great American Novel. Right? Didn't he write that?
Philip Roth? Maybe.
Book called The Great American Novel, and it's like, well, mic drop, that's done.
Yeah. Over.
Do it after that.
Totally blew their minds.
There is a Philip Roth as The Great American Novel 1973.
Okay, yeah.
I thought there was a second person that did that too. But, yeah, absolutely.
Jane Eggers wrote something like some title that was kind of like that, but I never read it. No, whatever.
Yeah. Screw it. No good.
No time enough for that.
Oh, man. Well, we should probably wrap things up on this one. To since we all have weird obligations at this time, but do you have a favorite quote from this section, Rachel?
Oh my God.
Yeah, we've been ending with favorite ones. So you can go first, unless Brian, you have something.
I liked. Okay, I liked 208 to 209 when he was talking about the way writers see the world. And the young man says, weighing possibilities, strengthening weak characteristics, and altering uncertain realities, inserting trial endings, trying to find the right words, that kind of thing. So the writer as a, puzzle, trying to do a puzzle, but also changing the puzzle while you're doing it to make it something perfect that, that isn't, quote, real life, but is the way that you might want things to turn out. That's what the writer does. So I thought that was pretty great. But there are like a million. I could read the whole thing.
Just read the whole chapter one day.
Read it to you.
Brian, do you have one that you're?
Yeah, I thought it was. I just got a kick out of when he was on the airplane. He was reading some book like Seven Deadly Scenes or one of those like craft books, and I always like once a month get one of those from the library because I'm stuck, and reading something like that just makes you feel bad, I guess, or terrible. But there's this other little thing that he put in there that I think was funny. It just says it's on 214. Trauma plus settling of scores equals a masterpiece. Period. It was just a funny little. One of the proven and most supposedly sure formulas of the trade. Trauma plus settling of scores equals masterpiece.
That seems like that would be right out of one of those books to a degree too. The one that I like that I had that marked too. One of the other ones I like is where he's talking about the guilt part, and this is a bit long, but I really like it. If you aren't publicly guilty, the guilt evaporates like a hangover after a forbidden party, and the guilty is no longer guilty, becoming conversely guilt-free. Could this be what people who sell their souls to the devil feel like? If so, that's not so bad. The feeling that nothing depends on you anymore, with the added benefit that you get to be your own demon creditor and are aware that you never had a soul to sell in the first place. And if you know that you're soulless, you never buy beyond your means. And there's something even more interesting, something that'll bolster you in your crime, the young man rationalizes, the conviction that almost everyone is just like you. Which I like that ending part of that a lot.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Indeed. It was a fun passage. It was a good little section.
This one, I like this part a lot because I think it's really intricate. Like the last section is so free flowing and all over the place, and this comes like and just like hones in on something, and gives us certain like clues for the future. So, and speaking of that, next week we will be talking about the next section, which is a few things you happen to think about when you want. Sorry, let me start that over. A few things you happen to think about when all you want is to think about nothing, which goes from which is sort of perfect. This is a very, very, very fun section. It goes from 231 to 300, so it's a little bit longer, but this one is incredibly. I think you'll really like this one. This one's fantastic. So, not that any of the parts aren't, but.
It's like you're moving through like 7 different countries. I mean, I went on a trip one time where I went through 7 countries in 11 days, and that's what this book feels like. It is wonderful. I love this. I don't know, put this book in my brain and just keep it there. I love this man. I want to read everything he's ever written.
I know,
I've never read him before. He's addictive. What is this? I mean, I need to meet him. Fly me to like wherever he is right now. Like, where is he? Spain or something?
He is in Barcelona. I'm going to see him in September, and he's going to be here in May, and we will bring him at least to Chicago.
Well, I'm there.
There is. I know. I sent you the next book, The Bottom of the Sky. The third one is being translated now. The dreamed part, and the last volume of this trilogy he's writing. And there's certain. I don't know exactly, and I hesitate to speculate, but there are various things that we've talked about where he's like, oh, that's perfect for this third volume. So I'm curious to see how this all like comes together in the end, or or does what it does. But
I'm worried I'm going to become the young man to his, the writer. Just like, I want to be you. I want to become you. This is creepy. No, I'm not going to be like that. But it is truly addictive. And the karma family, I cannot even, like, I have no words.
All I know is once he meets me, I'm going to become a character in one of his books because I've got stories for him. I'm going to use them up. I know it. I just know it. I can't wait.
Rodrigo.
He's gonna come here and he's gonna be swarmed. It's gonna be fantastic. But anyways, for now, so if you're listening to this, you can always find us at 3%. There's all the posts are marked under 2-month review. You can rate us on iTunes. There's also the Goodreads group, which the discussion is starting to get going there right now. Which if you go to Goodreads and look for 2-month review as the community group, you'll find it. There's also links all over the 3% website and every one of these posts. And Rachel, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at rcordas, RCORDAS. I'm on Facebook, sfintranslation.com, and also on Facebook at sfintranslation. Yeah.
Where you can find out all about books written before 1920.
Yeah, no.
And pictures of her Edith Wharton back tattoo, which I'm sure just runs the whole.
I would have gotten that if I didn't have a fear of needles. You have no idea. Edith Wharton, like a portrait of her on my back.
That'd be pretty funny, actually. You should have like book.
That would be great. And Brian, you're on Twitter.
I should do that.
You really should. And Brian,
I
you're
exist
on
on Twitter. I'm never on it, but I might start posting pictures. Yeah, sure, why not?
Brian Wood
at Brian Wood underscore. I'm doing something on there. I don't know. Who knows?
Someday.
Follow back, Brian.
Yeah.
I mean,
I gotta get in on this.
It's like polite, you know.
It's very true. That's all you need to do is just follow people back. So it's all about. So anyways, for this week, that wraps things up, and we'll be back next week with the next section.